I've done a couple of videos recently about two things that I think are really relevant right now, what we're talking about. One is Organizational Design 101, where we talk about the values and purpose of an organization. And the other one I did quite recently was around vision statements that matter. And how do we turn those vision statements into actual action? And what I want to talk about today is about Black Lives Matter. I'm not going to delve into the whole racism, societal issues side of it, but as an organization and as leaders of organizations, what I want to talk about is if you've made a Black Lives Matter statement or if you haven't, I want to talk about how you can actually make sure that that is an impactful statement, that it is a meaningful statement, and it leads to real improvements, not just for the people within your organization, but for society as a whole. And that's a lot to ask, but I think that it is key to what we're looking for from organizations now. We want organizations to not just make a product or deliver a service. We recognize how important they are to society, and what today's video is about how you can leverage your Black Lives Matter statement into action to have real impact for people beyond just profit and loss. We got the right stuff. We put the hammer right down. So we're recording this in the middle of June 2020. The Black Lives Matter movement has rekindled from where it was a few years ago. It is sweeping not just America, where it kind of kicked off with the George Floyd killing, but globally we're seeing it, and it's having real impacts. And one of the things that we're seeing is it's had a real impact on organizational leaders. And one of the decisions that leaders have had to make is, do we make some sort of Black Lives Matter statement? And in that discussion, what I want to stress to people is, look, it's up to you whether you want to make a statement for your organization or not. But what I want to really stress for people is not making a statement in the midst of everything that your economy, your country, the world is going through, society is going through. Not making a statement about Black Lives Matter at this point is actually making a very strong statement. So don't pretend that by avoiding making a statement, because it can be scary to say, what if we say the wrong thing, or what if we don't really mean it? But if you don't make a statement about Black Lives Matter, just rest assured, it is sending a very powerful message, both to your internal stakeholders, to your employees, to your people, as well as to your external stakeholders, to the public at large. So you don't have to do a Black Lives Matter statement, but if you don't think you're just staying neutral, that you're staying out of this. Really, it's a very powerful statement about your organization. So if you decided not to make a statement, again, that's up to every person involved in this, and we all make our own choices. So I'm going to assume, though, if you're still watching, that you have made a decision to make a Black Lives Matter statement, and what you're really concerned about is it meaningful, is it impactful? So let's assume you have made a Black Lives Matter statement, or you're thinking about it, or you're not sure how to go about it. So first things first, one of the questions you'll have to ask yourself is, what does our statement about Black Lives Matter now mean for everything we've done up to this point? And what I mean by that is, if you say Black Lives Matter, you feel very strongly about that, and you look around your boardroom, or you look around at the C-level of your organization, or the senior managers, the senior leaders of your organization, and they all look, frankly, like me, then it can be hard to say Black Lives Matter now and have that come across as meaningful, because you're worried, what if people ask us, well, look around your organization, and how seriously can you actually take it? So one of the things that comes up with your statement, if you're going to make a Black Lives Matter statement, is going to need to be, we need to look at our past practices. And that might mean literally apologizing because you've made mistakes in the process, or you've let down that process in some way. And or it can just mean recognizing whatever we've done hasn't been good enough. And again, that's a scary place for leaders to be. It's a scary place to say we've made mistakes, or we haven't lived up to ideals that we've said we've lived up to. But it is crucial to say, if we're going to move forward, we need to be able to say what we've done so far isn't good enough. And there's a lot of great Black Lives Matter statements out there right now. And the best ones right now are ones saying, we've looked around, we really do mean that, and we've looked at our organization. And you wouldn't know that from looking at our organization, that that's how we feel. So we're going to need to do things differently, and we're open to doing things differently. So if you look around and don't see evidence that Black Lives Matter in your organization, that doesn't mean you should avoid making the statement. It does mean, though, that you need to be really clear about the fact that what you've been doing up till now hasn't been good enough in this arena. So fundamental to that, then, is not just making a statement, but also attaching real concrete action to what you're going to do to address the situation. So again, that might involve redressing mistakes or shortcomings from before, and or it might just mean, look, going forward, we're going to redouble our efforts. We've been good at this. We can be better. Here's what we're going to do. But this is where most of the Black Lives Matter statements have really fallen down, is they've said something about we aspire to or we want to create an environment where, and they've said sort of the right things. But what people really want to see is, okay, what are you going to do in your organization to put that into practice, to put that into action, to make sure that in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we're not having the same conversations again because nothing actually changed. So your statement just can't be a statement of intention that we want to be right about this. It needs to say we want to be right about this, and here's the things we're actually going to put into place to make sure that change is going to happen in our organization. Once you decide this is our statement, these are the concrete actions we're going to put in place. One of the other key things that will determine how strong and how impactful your Black Lives Matter statement actually is do those actions actually fundamentally change your organization for the better, or are they something you add on? So in other words, are you accommodating or are you assimilating? And what I mean by that is saying, does your Black Lives Matter actions, when you say we're going to do something different, is that something you create on the side? Is it an addition? So if you're in venture capital and you've got a $100 million fund, do you create a separate $5 million fund for people of color or for women? That's something on the side. So what you're saying is we're going to keep our core business and we're going to add this. That's different than saying our core business has some flaws. We need to readdress our core business and assimilate Black Lives Matter, the issues related to that, racial injustice, and again, as that spreads into other injustices, but for right now, racial injustice. How do we make sure that that's embedded in the core of our business? I've seen a lot of companies do one or the other, and basically what I'm saying to you is accommodation, adding something on, it doesn't really address the core factors that led to the Black Lives Matter movement. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not as significant a step as it is to say we need to accommodate this mindset, this thinking, this fact that this is a systematic issue, and so it can't just be an add-on. It needs to be foundational to our organization and how we think about what our business is. Once you get to that point, that's when it's going to be most impactful and most meaningful. So again, as you're sitting around thinking about, we've made our statement, what are we going to do differently? Be really cautious not to just tack on a few additional things to your organization. It's far more impactful to think about what do we need to change about our core way of doing things, our core way of thinking that will actually change our business, not just add on another division or another wing that handles that stuff. So again, think about the easy way is accommodation, adding something on the side. The more foundational, the more impactful, the more meaningful changes to make are core to your foundational aspects of your organization. One final thing to consider in all this is as you're making these hopefully meaningful, concrete changes to your organization to back up whatever your statement is. So you said it, and now here's all the things you're putting into place. Is unfortunately, the world's conversation is going to move on. The press is going to shift to something new. Something's going to happen in politics. There's going to be a famine somewhere. The conversation, the pressure that a lot of leaders of organizations right now are feeling, that pressure is going to shift because that's just what tends to happen over time. So one of the things, again, if you want to be one of those leaders of an organization that is meaningfully committed to this, one of the things you can do is not just make sure that your concrete actions aren't for this week, this month, this year, but to start to set goals that are far longer in timeline. In other words, to say, here's where we want to be at the end of 2020 and at the end of 2025 and 2030. And here's where we'd like to be at 5-10 years down the road. So again, not saying we're not going to do anything for the next 5 years, but saying here's what we're going to do immediately, but also we've got plans that you can track, that you can measure, that you can hold us accountable to, that are visible, tangible changes to what we do. And they're not just going to be while the pressure's on us, while the world's eye is on us, while people are looking at hashtags that say Black Lives Matter, but we're taking this seriously, not just as a moment in time, but as a fundamental reset to our organization. So we're going to change what we do this week, this month, this year, but also 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And if you can commit to that and again, be transparent and show to people the concrete things you're going to be doing differently, that's when your Black Lives Matter statement is not just a nice statement, but actually maximally impactful for both your internal stakeholders and your external stakeholders. And again, if enough leaders of enough organizations really take this seriously, that's when you have societal change, and that's where hopefully, however far into the future it is, maybe we can start to make real progress on this issue of racial inequality. I hope that's helpful to you, and again, I hope what your takeaway from this is we want to support the Black Lives Matter movement because it speaks to foundational, systemic, and systematic racial inequalities in our societies, and it's really important that we actually put concrete action to work behind this. The statement, whatever statement you put out, is probably great, is probably fine, but you need to really commit to this. You need to really invest in the resources, the time, the effort to make concrete changes to your organization to make sure we're not back here again later. And again, at the companies, the organizations, the leaders that are able to do that, they're going to see tremendous impact on their organization. They're going to see tremendous impact from the people who are connected to that organization. And just to be clear, this isn't we're going to deal with a societal issue or we're going to make profit. All of the research we have says people, not just millennials, not just Gen Z, but people in general are starting more and more to vote with their pocketbook around organizations, companies that are committed to societal values, to improving society. So don't think of it as either we support this or we make money. It's fundamentally, if you don't support this, that's up to you. People make choices. But you can't just play neutral. That by not supporting it, that's making a choice, and your business, your organization will have to live with that choice. So again, if you're committed to this, don't just make the nice statement. That's a good starting point. Make sure you have concrete actions that you sit around and really measure and start to think about what will our company, how will our organization look differently this week, this month, this year, and into the future to make sure that we deal with this systemic issue of racial inequality. As always, I hope that's helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, please leave a message below or get in touch with our contact information at the end of the video. Thanks so much. And as always, if you want to get in touch, I'm happy to engage.
Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.